Have you ever walked up to a pretty girl and when you started to talk, nothing came out but silence? Have you run out of gas just a few miles from the nearest gas station? Have you found yourself freezing cold, wishing you had worn a sweater? Or maybe you have had to pull an all-nighter to finish a project that you procrastinated on until the last possible minute. What all of these scenarios have in common is a lack of planning. Having a plan is a good practice for everyone, especially for managers. Here are some reasons why it is a good idea for managers to plan. Managers can examine critical issues facing the organization instead of waiting for them to blow up in their face. Allowing uncertainty, high risk, and doubt to rule an organization is never a good idea. Planning allows a manager to determine organizational goals and define a means of achieving them. A manager can set explicit guidelines for decision making when done in advance. This allows the manager to be both small picture and big picture minded when making decisions. A manager is able to be more proactive than reactive in decisions. Failing to plan will take away your ability to look into the future and potentially predict an inevitable event before it becomes an issue. Planning increases the likelihood of long-term survival of an organization. A manager can focus attention on organizational goals and results. A manager is able to create ownership of the plan and develop a team that buys into and accepts accountability for their role in the plan. A manager can provide a sense of direction, vision, rationale, and purpose for the plan, which can be easily communicated to other members of the organization, showing them how serious a manager is about reaching organizational goals. A manager can create a competitive advantage by taking the time to plan, a process that allows an organization to examine who they are in relation to their competition, and thus provide a good deal of insight into how to be better than that competition. Now that we know why it's a good idea for managers to plan, let's dive a bit deeper into the planning function of management. In the world of management, planning is as fundamental as it gets. If you recall, the first of the managerial functions is planning. Many believe planning is the most fundamental of the managerial functions because all other functions, including organizing, leading, controlling, and staffing, stem from the planning function. Planning prepares organizations for tomorrow, today, by assessing what an organization wants to accomplish and how it will go about achieving that goal. Managers will spend much of their time planning for all sorts of things that may or will occur in the organization. Typically, a manager will create a plan that is aimed at accomplishing some organizational goal, such as increasing sales or improving customer service. However, it is important to note that planning is an ongoing step that can be highly specialized based on an organization's goals, division goals, departmental goals, and team goals. It is up to the manager to recognize what goals need to be planned for within their individual area. For example, let's say Erin, the enrollment manager, has noticed a steady decline in the amount of students enrolling in the business program, so she creates a goal to increase enrollments in that area. Erin must first spend time mapping out the necessary steps she and her team of enrollment advisors need to take to increase the enrollment numbers of undergraduate business students. These steps might include things like increasing online advertisements on business-related sites, creating a new advertisement for television or radio, asking current business students to talk to their friends and family about enrolling in the program, or going out to local high schools or community colleges to speak directly with students who may be enrolling at the university in the next semester. The steps are then organized into a logical pattern so that Erin and her team can follow it. While Erin has come up with a good plan for how to increase enrollment of undergraduate business students relatively quickly, not all managers are so lucky. In fact, there are several barriers that can hinder the planning process. For example, Aaron was fortunate to have had the prior experience planning how to overcome problems with enrollment numbers. However, not all managers have the experience and knowledge of how to plan effectively. Knowing how to plan is only the tip of the iceberg. Even those managers who understand how to put plans in place aimed at achieving an organizational goal face barriers for effective planning. Sometimes it is not the knowledge about how to plan that impacts the success of the planning process, rather, a lack of accurate information or resources that does. A manager will need information to be correct, up to date, and reliable when creating a plan. Otherwise, it will more than likely fail. Some managers make the critical error of not looking far enough ahead when planning. They get stuck in the present at the expense of the future. Putting too much emphasis on the short term and not enough on the long term factors in a plan can have devastating consequences. Essentially, managers should be careful not to lose sight of the forest when looking at the trees. Those managers who fear uncertainty and failure will tend to focus on creating plans that they feel in control over. Concentrating on events, people, and things that a manager can control limits the manager's ability to react when a change in the external environment occurs. Again, this inability to adapt to challenges can place a negative impact on an organization and its ability to reach its goals. Likewise, there are managers who lack commitment to the planning process. Let's face it, planning can be a time-consuming, challenging process. The list of barriers managers face when planning is significant. However, by creating an awareness of these issues, they can be identified early in the process. Once these issues are identified, a manager must take the necessary steps to overcome these challenges so that he or she can continue on the path of working towards organizational goals. Let's review. The first of the managerial functions is planning. Many believe planning is the most fundamental of the managerial functions because all other functions, including organizing, leading, controlling, and staffing, stem from the planning function. Planning prepares organizations for tomorrow today by assessing what an organization wants to accomplish and how it will go about achieving that goal. The advantages of planning include the ability to examine critical issues facing the organization, set explicit guidelines for decision making, be more proactive than reactive in decisions, focus attention on organizational goals and results, create ownership of the plan, develop a team that buys into and accepts accountability, provide a sense of direction, vision, rationale, and purpose for the plan, communicate the plan to members of the organization, and create a competitive advantage. There are several barriers to effective planning that can hinder the planning process, which include a lack of experience and knowledge of how to plan effectively, a lack of accurate information or resources, not looking far enough ahead when planning, focusing too much on creating plans which managers feel in control over, and lacking commitment to the planning process. Effective managers take the time to acknowledge these barriers to the planning process and work to overcome them so that they can continue on the path of working towards organizational goals.
So operational planning is not the same as strategic planning. Operational planning is a good thing. Organizations have to do it, and they do it on a regular basis, and they do it to implement the decisions that they've already made. But when they're doing strategic planning, it's really different. It's really an opportunity for an organization to fundamentally rethink who are they? What is the future that they're facing as an organization? And out of that, to create a vision for how they really want to be fundamentally different in the future from how they are today. And then once they're clear about that vision, then put together a strategy that will help move them from where they are today to that vision. And that's the essence of strategic planning. I've been doing strategic planning for over 35 years now. And what I found more and more is the organizations I work for are developing plans that they actually go out and implement and get the results they're expecting because they're serious about it. And what I help them do is get serious about it. I help them understand, first of all, what strategic planning is. I lead them through the process, and then I help them get clear about what they're going to have to do once they have a plan to actually put it in place and sustain it over time. I use a very simple, straightforward process for strategic planning that doesn't get mired in the details and in all of the trivia that can go along with planning, but it keeps it very focused on the core questions that are being asked. And what I found is that really helps organizations by keeping the process very simple. It helps them to engage deeply in all of the complexity and the nuances they have to deal with in order to come up with a focused plan that they can then implement.
Hi, my name is Erica Olson with M3 Planning. Today's topic is about what is strategic planning really? You know, strategic planning means different things to different people, and we have found that if we're not really clear about what we mean by strategic planning for an organization up front before we get started, we tend to have some problems getting people engaged in the middle of the process, or there's just roadblocks or people's resistance gets in the way. So here are the different types of things we mean when we talk about strategic planning, and there are different outcomes most of the time that leaders are seeking when they're engaging in a strategic planning process. These build, so let's talk about them sequentially, and then you can think as we're moving through what you're really looking for in your strategic planning process. So at the very base level, a strategic planning process is an articulated plan. People want an articulated plan for their organization. So what do I mean by that? That means we have a mission, we have a vision, we have goals, objectives, etc. An articulated plan. Sometimes we want to add on to that plan is actually strategic. And you may say, well, it's a strategic plan, but that's not necessarily true unless you bring in external data. If you don't bring in external market data, such as what your customers think, what your competitors are doing, what's happening in your environment, in your industry, you're not going to have a strategic plan. You're just going to have a plan. Now, sometimes we don't need a strategic plan. Sometimes we just need an articulated set of mission, vision, goals, objectives. But sometimes we really need to figure out what our strategic differentiation is in the marketplace. And in which case, to do so, you need to add into your process that market data collection, use it to make strategic decisions about what you're doing and not doing, such that your plan actually articulates how you're different. Okay, so a plan that's strategic that also drives organizational engagement. How do we drive organizational engagement? We cascade goals. And cascaded goals mean that everybody in the organization knows what their piece of the strategy and the plan are. That drives organizational engagement. And you may say, well, of course I want everybody engaged. And sometimes we want that in organizations, but we don't have the wherewithal to actually make that happen. And sometimes that's not necessary right now. So it's important to know if your strategic planning process is intended to drive organizational engagement or not. And if it is, you need to make sure that your plan goes all the way down to the individual level so everybody knows their piece of the future. So sometimes we add on to that the want to actually drive organizational transformation using a strategic planning process. And how do we do that? We have an articulated plan that's strategic, that's cascaded through the whole organization, that we talk about on a regular basis and we make changes to as we move along the way, and we help shift behaviors and we help drive choice. And we do that by visibly talking about it in specific meetings. I'm calling quarterly business reviews. You may call them something else. But the point is we're using this information to drive decision making and drive behavior, and we're talking about it and we're being visible about it. So as you're thinking about your strategic planning process, think about what's important to your organization right now and get everybody on the same page about what the real outcome of your process is intended to be.
Hello Ben, can I explain any management concepts?
Professor Siegfried, what is management by objectives, MBO?
Well Ben, management by objectives, MBO, is a process of defining objectives within an organization so that management and employees agree to the objectives and understand what they need to do in the organization in order to achieve them. The term management by objectives was first popularized by Peter Drucker in his 1954 book titled, The Practice of Management.
Professor, what is the core benefit of management by objectives?
The benefit of MBO is participative goal setting, choosing course of actions and decision making. An important part of the MBO is the measurement and the comparison of the employee's actual performance with the standard set. Ideally, when employees themselves have been involved with the goal setting and choosing the course of action to be followed by them, they are more likely to fulfill their responsibilities.
Thanks Professor for explaining management by objectives, MBO.